Okay, our final speaker for today is Fiona Hassmann. Fiona's personal experience with brain cancer and the struggles associated with finding help and guidance led her to the Peace of Mind Foundation. Fiona began with volunteer work, which has evolved into assisting families gain access to the NDIS. She will speak to us today around the National Advocacy Service accessing NDIS, which is an effort in itself. My Aged Care, which we spoke about earlier, Centrelink and Carer Gateway. So I'll be interested to hear what Fiona says. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon. Those that know me well know I can talk for a very long time, and for me to do presentations in 20 minutes is near impossible. So there's a lot to cover today, so I have written a few notes. So as the introduction said, my name's Fiona. My own partner was diagnosed with a glioblastoma in December of 2018. For those first 14 months of his diagnosis, we found the ability to find supports, to find avenues to have practical assistance into our home, to have our 4 children supported, our incomes replenished that were instantly lost overnight was very difficult. Eventually, with a referral into the palliative care unit at the Robina Hospital, a beautiful social worker there worked through the NDIS process with myself, and we managed to get a very inclusive package for my partner. We were able to hire support workers, we had allied health teams, we had home cleaning, we had yard maintenance, we had home maintenance. But the best part of the NDIS for us as a family was when he faced his final stages in his life, where we were able to have those supports in our home 24 hours a day for him to pass away in an environment that was safe and comfortable for him. So we're very grateful to the NDIS. Thank you to Catherine for asking us to come today. Very, very grateful. Our service is very new. So the Peace of Mind, though, is not. The Peace of Mind Foundation, let me just move on, has been around since 2013. Beck Mallet and her brother Clint created the Peace of Mind Foundation in Geelong in Victoria after Clint's sister Carolyn had passed away from a brain tumour. Whilst they've predominantly had their services in the Geelong region, it's just gathered national attention for their many retreats that are held every year. So for those of you that aren't aware, the Peace of Mind Foundation run 4 retreats annually, which is for men, women, families, and a bereaved retreat. The retreats are held for a whole weekend where families or people who are diagnosed or the carer of those that are diagnosed are paid to have accommodation, meals and all activities paid. Your only expense is to get yourself to the actual retreat. The Peace of Mind Foundation exists to provide support in many forms, but to patients and families impacted by brain tumour diagnosis, so not necessarily malignant, right? We look after the benign tumours also. A number of services have been provided consistently by the Peace of Mind, counselling in addition to their retreats, financial assistance packages, and in recent years they've had Australia's first brain cancer support worker. His name is Jonathan. He's based in the Barwon region in Geelong. He's an absolute superstar, and if anybody's had anything to do with Jonathan, you will remember him very kindly. He steps through that process with patients and carers very compassionately and beautifully, and is a real place of warmth for them to connect to. We are hoping to obtain funding going through the years to ensure that we actually have brain cancer support workers rolled out across the entire country. The National Advocacy Service is the Peace of Mind's most recent child, and there was 2 advocates, myself and Brad, have for the last 12 months predominantly been the main advocates for that service. And he refers to it quite clearly as we've been hanging onto the edge of a cliff by our fingernails because we have been inundated with requests for support from our service. We are so proud and privileged to be invited into the lives of people who have been diagnosed with a brain tumour diagnosis. It can be a very unwelcoming space for many and a very fearful space, and we like to think that we provide a little bit of compassion and care surrounding that. In the recent month, we've managed to obtain some additional funding, which we're very grateful for, and we've managed to put on 2 additional advocates in Melissa and Helen, and they've started with us 4 weeks ago. So we are now 4 strong, and we're proud to say we currently and hope to continue to have no wait list. We all make ourselves available selflessly, and all of us have one intent, and that's to support a family and to make sure that they have those practical and emotional supports around them that are going to guide them through what they're needing to do. The NAS was created initially as a small voluntary service in the middle of 2020 following a study that the Peace of Mind Foundation conducted indicating that 70% of brain tumour patients were rejected from the NDIS on the first attempted application. A number of them also passed away before receiving any packages or acknowledgement of acceptance. The volunteer service was so successful that the inception of the service was submitted formally for funding, and Cure Brain Cancer Foundation collaborated to ensure that the initial success rates shown were not only able to continue but to expand. We're very grateful to Craig Cardinal, who's here in the room with us today, for all of his assistance in guiding this process and for his insight. Further areas that were noted, though, during the survey and through further discussions with patients was the inconsistency in finding supports available in each state, the inability for the hospitals to have the staffing to enable them to resource the assistance required to navigate each patient, the patient not having the capacity themselves to investigate, the carer simply finding the process equally overwhelming. Me as a carer myself, I often refer to me as being here every single day, filled with information and uncertainty. I called this little bit hypervigilance, right? This was the bit that was always firing and always waiting for whatever else was going to happen to make me on the top. And we're very respectful of that when we're talking to families. So, what do we do? How do we do it? So our service receives referrals, and we get them by many means. So they come in privately by yourself, by your carer, by a friend, family member, someone else who's heard of us. It can come in through your hospital service, but it's all done via the Peace of Mind Foundation website. There is a button, log a referral, ask for support, very simple form, name, address, phone number, who's your carer, where's your treating hospital. The hospital staff that we're currently working with around the country have provided great feedback to us, saying that we have made their a level of ability to service their patients so much easier, and we're very grateful for that. We connect with families very quickly, usually within the first 24 hours of receiving their referral. We do not let people wait either. If you're reaching out for help, it's because you want the help and you want it now. Our initial discussions are broad, information gathering, talking about diagnosis and its impact. But we do delve into where their supports are lacking: financial, practical, emotional. We talk at great length about the service and what it's designed to do for them, and equally our limitations. And I'll be honest, these initial conversations for some can be very, very difficult. Sometimes they're voicing their personal concerns for the very first time to a complete stranger. We often agree in our team meetings at how privileged that we are as family, that families open up their insecurities to us and ask us for their assistance, for our assistance. We move forward into implementing the supports in alignment with our original discussions, always being mindful that our role is to guide. It's to support, it's not to lead. We continually listen, we provide options, we provide solutions, we delve down that rabbit hole of regional and state supports, finding what is going to be relevant to their needs. Our staff then fully assist with the drafting of the documentation, filling in of the forms, often receiving authority to submit these direct to their medical teams, and review and signature. The trust we have built with many wonderful hospitals around the country makes our work just that little easier. Once those supports are in place, which we do get them in place, we continue to then further connect with the family to ensure that they're working correctly, the gaps that have previously been cavernous are closing, and that the families are able to move further through the diagnosis, far better connected in multiple ways. Accessing our service is simple. I talked about that already. So there's a space though to put on the information, and the form is nice and brief. The referral then comes back through to whichever service that you have chosen through the Peace of Mind Foundation. So you might choose retreats, you might choose financial counselling, you might choose financial assistance, or you might choose the NAS. In the instance that you choose the NAS, which is how we refer to our National Advocacy Service, one advocate is allocated to that family. You don't get me one day, Brad another day, Helen on the third day, and back to me on the fourth day. One advocate is allocated to the family for the length of service, however long that might be. And there's no cost for it. It's free. So we are very young. We are a baby service, but our impact already is huge. far greater than what we had anticipated for our first year, but equally for those of us that have been in the circle of brain tumour world, not surprising as to how many of us have reached out for assistance, and those that have managed to find us, because we still don't advertise, because we've only recently had capacity to take on much more. So the impact is far-reaching in multiple layers, and while statistics are helpful, there are many parts of service that we provide that have no quantifiable value, because it comes from our hearts, it comes from our empathy, it comes from our compassion and our drive to see our families connected and supported. It comes in many hours of conversations, laughter and tears, as we connect personally to each and every one of them, as they connect to one advocate for their entire service with us, and the connection is always a very strong one. To date, we're so very pleased to confirm that 281 families supported nationally in the last 12 months with the National Advocacy Service. 60% of those currently referred to us are diagnosed with a GBM, slightly higher male base over female. 80% of our clients currently are aged under 65, and we've had a 100% successful outcome in lodging NDIS applications for 120 families to date. Not one rejection. One person in the room is problematic, aren't you, Julia? She's my problem child. I've got 2 case studies today. This fellow here, 31-year-old male, he lives in the Hunter region in New South Wales. He was originally referred to us by his cancer consultant with the Mark Hughes Foundation. He had an existing NDIS plan, but it was low. It was ridiculously low. It didn't suit his needs. But equally, it was NDIA managed because nobody had explained to the family at the time the restrictions that they would face with an NDIA managed plan, let alone when I heard the value of the plan, I went, holy heck, that won't last 3 months. But our job at that time was to align them with a support coordinator, which we did within 48 hours, and the family were back off and running with the plan that they had in hand. Sorry, I've lost my spot. After a period of time, the father, and a period of time, I would suggest it was probably at least 6 or 8 months later, that he came back to us that his son had had a series of seizures. Those seizures had come so rapid fire and were so severe, they actually left a level of permanent deficit for his son. So much so that the hospital said, he's not coming home. His deficits are too high, your NDIS plan is too low, you can't care for him, you can't provide the supports, you can't transfer him. He cannot stay home, you don't have the equipment and the resources available. And his father rang me and he said, well, what can we do about that? And I said, well, we get a new plan. And he said, how quickly can we do that? I said, I don't know. So this young man, he stayed in hospital for 2 months whilst the support coordinator, myself, and his father continued to battle with the NDIA to get him home. The hospital said he really needs to go to aged care. He's 31 years old. We went through an LAC who said, I don't have the power to approve a plan as high as you want. She put it to a senior planner. The senior planner said, I don't have the authority to approve the plan you want. You need to go to the home and living team. The home and living team said, we've got a 6 to 8 month wait. And the father said, I want my son home. So we lodged a complaint with his federal MP in the Hunter region, who raised that through to ministerial level. Once it reached ministerial level, well, how quickly things change at ministerial level. Within 3 weeks, we had a very ample plan for this young man, and he went home, and he did not go into aged care. Yeah? It's huge. My favourite client, this beautiful girl. It will be hard for me because she is so gorgeous. This little girl had a DIPG. She was referred to us by the Royal Children's Hospital after an NDIS submission had already been lodged for access request. The little girl's mother, having been increasingly difficult with Centrelink in accessing support payments, we spent a number of hours ensuring her paperwork was correct. And ultimately, after a number of calls, it was approved. The NDIS access team granted approval to the scheme based on the hospital submission, and the planning meeting was held with the mother and myself. And as we went through discussions about the supports that were needed, it became clear that there was some confusion as to what the mother and I were talking about, as to what the NDIA planner was thinking she was pulling together. And she said, doesn't your daughter have autism? So we went into a discussion which upset the mother greatly, of course, because then I had to say on a phone call exactly what was going on for her daughter, and we don't understand how they didn't have the concept of that from the hospital submission. The planner, thankfully, was highly compassionate and gave us 48 hours to get additional information and evidence into the NDIA to enable us to pull a plan together. With young children in Melbourne, thankfully, they were attached to Very Special Kids. Very Special Kids are a wonderful organisation. They rallied around their entire allied health team, pulled together reports from occupational therapists, physio, psychology, the entire network that they could pull together, and we had those reports back in 24 hours, not in 48 hours. We were very grateful. My client's family are Ethiopian born, and they decided during a break in treatment to travel to Ethiopia for Christmas. And due to mobility concerns, their daughter would struggle in a standard stroller, so the Peace of Mind Foundation provided a financial grant for them to purchase a specific stroller for international travel. Whilst they were in Ethiopia, gosh, I'm terrible with my notes, my apologies. Unfortunately, my client deteriorated and they could not return to Australia for close to 3 months. During this time, Centrelink cancelled her carer payment and her carer allowance. She had no income. She's in a country where medication is highly expensive. She's in an area where her family that were there were not financial people. They prayed for their daughter and they gave her holy water. I stepped into Centrelink, into the space of appeals, where I had no permission or authority over her file, but went back through the federal MP. The mother and I only had Viber chat as a communication method for 3 months. After 2.5 months, Centrelink reinstated her payments and back paid and apologised profusely for removing her payments, enabling her to have some money. Sadly, this beautiful little girl passed away at the end of April this year at the age of 4. The photo here is not her. Her mother does not want her photo shared. But she's just as beautiful as this little girl. During service of all of the work we had done previously, Centrelink had also sent our client 4 debts totalling $17,500 of overpaid childcare benefit that she had mistakenly not reported her income correctly for a number of years. She had not worked for 18 months. She was grieving. She had no capacity to make payment. We did an appeal through to Centrelink providing the details of their case. They told us it would take 6 weeks to be assessed and to come back, and they came back to us within 5 days and had waived that debt completely and in entirety for her circumstances. For that, we were very, very grateful. So, we pack an impact, and we don't just do NDIS plans, although we do love them, right? For those that think that NDIS plans are hard, yeah, they can be, but we try our best to make it easier. If you think about the NDIS and what it does, it's evidence gathering, right? If you go to them with all your medical information and all about the disease and all about how you're having treatment and all about your surgical procedures, you'll get rejected. They're an insurance scheme, yeah? They're not medical. They want to know how your diagnosis impacts you, what happens in your day, how you can't step over things, how you can't remember things, how you have perception issues, how your peripheral vision's gone and you bang into things. Right? They want to know the impact to your day. If you can put together an example as to how your impact is each day, the NDIS will provide a plan. How your supports are, depending on how bad your impairments are, is what the value of that plan will be. But that's what our service does do, along with My Aged Care, Centrelink, any other services that are required. But as I said earlier, the statistics are great. You know, numbers are fantastic, but the best part of our service is the connection. Because that's the thing for all of us that we miss the most. We get looked after beautifully when we're in our hospitals. Our surgical teams are very qualified, our oncology teams are educated and professional and always are thinking of the best level of care. But as I say, we walk out the door of the hospitals and our worlds turn grey because we don't know what to do. So our service, thankfully, is going to be around for a while. Cure Brain Cancer have been very good to us. The Peace of Mind Foundation is very established. Our service of advocates are ready, and we would invite you to go onto the Peace of Mind Foundation website and request support service if you're needing assistance. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. I have to parrot that I do a lot of NDIS applications. They are time-consuming, but I do them for patients because it's the only way to access services, especially if you're under 65 years of age. And as Fiona said, they're not interested in your diagnosis, they're interested in your disability. And that's what a lot of the medical team, I think, don't understand about. It's really about the disability and the impact that diagnosis has had to you, and that's what the NDIS are interested in. And for me, it's really getting a lot of support, documentation, OTs, physios, all of that stuff to back up what the patient's disabilities are.